best rated and called as the best in the business?
Well, we're very proud. It's an amazing achievement. We're very proud to be.
Foundation of PAX Migration in Adelaide.
So PAX Migration, we started this firm in 2014. A lot of difficulty finding good quality migration advice. So we. Well, recently we had a case, actually, very recently. Some very different ideas to how immigration should run. And, like I said earlier,
can you share a memorable experience you have had with a client?
a memorable experience, one that stands out for me is this, a client that came to
Hello, how are you?
And Natalia, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Okay, let's start. So, what inspired the foundation of PAX Migration in Adelaide?
So PAX Migration, we started this firm in 2014. Christina, my wife, was working as an English language teacher, and she was seeing a lot of students come through the school and having a lot of difficulty finding good quality migration advice. So we identified this issue in the marketplace that it was hard to find good quality advisors. There were a lot of people that were doing it just part-time, not really a full-time career, which is very difficult to do in this field. It's very legal and it's changing all the time, and you really have to be in it all the time. So we thought we can do this better. We can provide a service to not only students, but skilled migrants, and also now more and more businesses that need to sponsor people, and do it in a way that's 100% professional and high quality advice and at a reasonable price point. And that's what we set out to achieve from the outset. And it's been working. So we've been growing ever since. And I think we've really contributed to the field, the profession, by providing that good quality advice. So that's how we started, and we continue to do that.
That sounds amazing. So, can you describe some unique challenges you have faced in Adelaide migration industry?
The migration industry is always full of challenges. It is one of the most challenging industries that I think exist, and I've been in a couple of different ones. I was previously in finance, and tax is another area of great complexity. Tax law and immigration law are very similar in terms of being very voluminous, a lot of detail. And so the biggest challenge in this field is just dealing with the complexity of the law and the policy and the different stakeholders. So for people listening, navigating the Australian immigration system isn't just as simple as certainly not looking at a form and filling out a form. It's about understanding, what does the law actually allow and not allow? That's the first framework. But then after that, understanding what policy is. What does the government really want people to do and not do? And that policy is always changing, almost weekly sometimes. And certainly during some periods like COVID, it was changing weekly. And so you have to be monitoring all of these changes all of the time so that you can provide the most current advice to clients. So that's probably the biggest challenge. Right now, we're seeing a bit of a shift globally in terms of anti-immigration sentiment. That's starting to come through now. So that's going to play out in terms of changes to laws and policies as well, and making it more difficult to obtain visas. So that's another area where we're just having to constantly be vigilant about, and really making sure that every client, every application is really strong, because it is becoming a little bit more challenging out there now.
Okay, so then what makes PAX Migration stand out in Adelaide's migration scene?
We stand out, like I said, when we started the business, is on two things that we wanted to do well, which is being technically excellent and providing a high level of customer service. So it's really just those two things and not much else. Really, everything else is secondary to those two things. If we do a very good job technically, so that we're always accurate with our advice, we're always timely, we're up to date, and we're getting the outcomes for our clients. That's the critical thing. And then we're providing good quality customer service to our clients. Then everything else falls into place from there. So that's what sets us apart from some of our other competitors, is that we really focus on that. We put a lot of investment into our training, into our knowledge. We're always engaged with the industry to keep our knowledge up to date, and always working with our team to make sure we're providing the best service all the time.
So, in that way, can you share an interesting scenario you have incurred while handling a case?
Well, recently we had a case, actually, very recently, but the actual issue arose a couple of years ago, and we're now going through a process at the federal court to appeal. Is where someone didn't disclose that they had a a criminal offence, and it was only a minor criminal offence. It wasn't a big issue, and it would never have caused a problem for the grant of the visa. It would not have been an issue, but they didn't disclose it. And because they didn't disclose it, the Department of Immigration refused the application, and then there were some other complications. So we needed to appeal that decision. We appealed it, and we fought for the rights of that person who made what is called an innocent mistake, which is a defence against not providing information correctly. And so we're now at the federal court arguing that, and we're now quite confident that we're going to succeed. We have some very strong arguments, but it was very interesting to see how the decision maker at Home Affairs and at the tribunal were very, very strict about the fact that if you did not disclose, it doesn't really matter that the criminal offence was so minor. What matters is that you didn't disclose. So that's a message for anyone listening. Make sure you do disclose everything, even if it's minor. It's not going to be a problem for the grant of the visa, but it will be a problem if you don't disclose it. And then, of course, they inevitably find out.
Okay, so can you discuss any news or developments in the migration industry?
Well, right now we're going through an election process. So in the next couple of months, the Australian government is going to an election. The federal government, that's the government that controls immigration policy. So we have in Australia the states, all of the state governments, but the Commonwealth government, the federal government, is what controls immigration. So that election is very important, and that comes around once every 3 years. And so what we might be seeing is a very high likelihood that the government's going to change. Currently, the odds are that the government will change to the opposition, which is the Liberal and National Coalition. They have some very different ideas to how immigration should run. And like I said earlier, we are seeing an anti-immigration sentiment creep in. In politics, that always is an issue. It's very rare that a politician will gain points by being pro-immigration. So it's always a challenge. But what we're seeing now is that new government may be anti-immigration to an extent. I don't think that's necessarily going to play out that way, though, because immigration is very positive for Australia, positive for our economy. And I'm confident that any government that's in power is going to see that value and act accordingly. We may see some changes in the investor visa space. The investor visas have been removed, and so you cannot get a visa now to Australia just by investing money. That may well come back, and we're seeing that happening in the United States now. That may well be giving some courage to to the ministers, the governments, to make that change and bring that sort of visa back. So that's something we're watching closely. We're going to watch the numbers. The numbers might change in terms of the total numbers that are going to be allowed to come to Australia. That's something that everyone is watching, because the government has changed the way they've approached that, and the housing shortage has really driven that. And if that plays out and recovers, then we can probably see numbers improve again in immigration. We're also seeing some policy changes in the employer-sponsored space and a movement more towards labour agreements, which is a very niche area, but something we have a lot of knowledge about and we assist our clients with. So that's an exciting area for everyone to engage with in terms of obtaining visas under the employer-sponsored framework.
Okay. How do you handle last minute changes or issues during the migration process?
This is a great question. This comes up often in our industry. We're constantly changing. We have to be constantly vigilant about it. So the best thing what I tell all new junior agents is to be constantly tapped into the news. So you have to be reading and listening and attending events to be aware of what's happening in the industry. So you have to be attending conferences. That's a no-brainer. You have to be reading all of the bulletins, reading the news, and listening to people that are in positions of power or influence and understanding what are they saying, but what are they not saying. And this is a bit of a skill. It's about reading what policy might be turning into without them actually announcing it yet. It's anticipating. And if you anticipate, then when the changes happen, you're already ready. That's the key to success in this field. And we have a lot of systems now. We've developed a lot of systems that allow us to roll out changes to programs to our clients very quickly. So that helps with the ever-changing dynamic of this of the immigration system.
Yeah, good. What advice would you give to individuals planning to migrate to Adelaide?
So anyone planning to migrate to Australia that's not currently here, and if they're coming to Adelaide, what you will need to do is research housing. Very important. It's not something you can just arrive and deal with that when you're here. You need to really plan that out. There is a shortage of houses, but it doesn't mean you can't get a rental. They're out there. You can certainly get rentals. You can certainly purchase a property as well. There are some additional costs for those with temporary visas to be aware of. So getting advice about that is really useful. But yeah, pay attention to housing and make sure you've made some arrangements there. Schooling for children, if you have children, have a look at the schools and try to find a house that's close to the school. Adelaide is very easy to navigate, but it doesn't have a metro, subway, train system like some other cities. You really need to be able to drive. And if you drive, it's not a problem. It's very easy to get around. Pretty much it's a 20-minute city is how we call it. You're 20 minutes from anywhere in the city and metropolitan area. But have a look at the schools and the driver's license. You really probably need a driver's license to really navigate Adelaide well. And just be aware that it is a very easy to live city, but if it's not like living in Europe where you might be very close to another city, it is a 2-3 hour flight from Sydney and Brisbane and other places. So, but that's probably the main things to think about coming from overseas.
Okay, that's good. Can you share a memorable experience you have had with a client?
A memorable experience, one that stands out for me is this a client that came to me, and she was she was in her 50s, and she had lived in the United Kingdom in London for the last it would have been about 40 years or 30 odd years. So she was born in the UK, in London, and she migrated to Australia as a child, a very young child, like 1 or 2 years old. And she grew up in Adelaide and left Adelaide as an adult, about 18, 19 years of age, went back to the UK to live. And she stayed there ever since. And she came to us and said, "Can I get a visa? My family, I have family in Adelaide and I'd like to return. I grew up in Adelaide and I feel a kinship to Adelaide. It's like my home, but I've lived in the UK for the last 30 years. Actually, there's a provision in the Australian immigration law that allows someone to obtain a permanent visa if they had spent the majority of their formative years, and it's not as simple as that, but generally, if you have spent your childhood in Adelaide, in Australia, you're eligible for a permanent visa. There's a little bit more to it, but that's the crux of it. So she was absolutely rapt that was an opportunity. We applied for that. We put in a lot of detail about her childhood. We had to go back to school records and get old photos from the 1970s. It was quite interesting. And so it was really amazing. It came back really quickly. The government approved it and she was able to migrate to Australia and return. to what she considered her primary home, where she grew up.
Yeah. All right. What are your future plans for expanding PAX Migration services?
So we are now looking, so we've established a law firm. So we have a migration agency and a law firm practice, so we can provide full legal assistance to clients and not restricted to just migration agency work. We've expanded our corporate team because the need for employer sponsorship is really growing. So we're spending a lot more energy in the corporate space and assisting businesses and candidates and migrants who are seeking employment in Australia. And really building that team in Adelaide to build that team culture and build the clientele in Adelaide here. That's where our primary focus is.
Okay, so now our last question. How does it make you feel to be listed on Three Best Rated and called as the best in the business?
Well, we're very proud. It's an amazing achievement. We're very proud to be acknowledged by ThreeBestRated. At first, we probably felt a little bit embarrassed. We're not sort of award people, and we don't get out there all that much publicly. But it's very, I guess, we now really see it as a reward for the effort we put in, and it gives us the encouragement to keep going. That's really probably the main thing, is that when you get acknowledged by somebody and they're looking at you from the outside, and you realize this is actually what we are doing is actually contributing, it really does give us a lot more energy to keep going. And so we're very proud, and thank you to ThreeBestRated for all of the support that you've given us.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Natalia. Thanks, guys.